Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MongoSlade. Let's talk about Matt Cardona versus Nick Gage from Game Changer Wrestling Homecoming. So, this is the only match I watched on the entire show. I do not watch Game Changer Wrestling, it sucks. But, I was morbidly curious at Matt Cardona versus Nick Gage. So, I went out and I found the match and I watched it. And man, oh man, was it fun. It was mostly fun. Now, from the very beginning, the pre-match video, it was very good. They were showing how, through the pre-match video, you got to see Nick Gage. And you actually got to see, like, the beginning of their feud when Nick Gage called him out and called him a pussy and all that kind of stuff. But you also got to see how Nick Gage is beginning to cross over and become more mainstream. That he made TMZ from the whole thing with David Arquette, that he was on Dark Side of the Ring. And that, more people were starting to give him his props. And he was becoming more and more mainstream. And then you see from Matt Cardona's perspective, he goes from the mainstream to the underground. So he's trying to establish that Zack Ryder is dead. And he's no longer Zack Ryder. And people think that he's a pussy because he was a wrestler in WWE and was doing fun stuff and all that. And he's like, no, I'm serious. I'm really doing this. And it still came off as kind of bullshit. So it wasn't like he all of a sudden flipped the switch and was like king of the death match. He was still kind of being an asshole, being, an entitled prick. And of course they showed when Zack Ryder popped up at that pay-per-view and dropped him. So that was pretty cool. And then you get to the arena. The arena is literally a broom closet. It probably has like 200 people in there, maybe 250. And Zack Ryder's theme plays, oh, radio. And you just hear like, boo, And it's like, people are just like really pissed at the Zack Ryder theme. So about halfway through it transitions to his regular music. Always ready. And then he comes out and he's got private security helping him push through the crowd. He's flipping off everybody. He's wearing like white with purple gloves and everything. And Cardona's in the ring. And he's jacked to the gills. Like he's big. He's a big dude. And he comes in. He's flipping people off. And people are cussing at him. And, it had such a great feel to it. Where it felt like they were really being invaded. There was, for somebody during Nick Gage's entrance, because, Nick Gage has an elaborate, almost Sandman-like entrance. Somebody brought out a collector's case of action figures, because that was the thing that really kind of they used to make fun of Matt Cardona, that he collects action figures, that he was in WWE and all this time. And Cardona was like, you spent 2 years locked up for robbing a bank. I spent 10 years locked up in WWE. Like it's not nearly the same thing, but you kind of see where he's coming from, that he's got all this stuff that he wants to unleash. So the match itself was full of everything that I hate. Fluorescent light tubes, pizza slicers, all that shit. But I love how we got there. They didn't just go in there and just start hitting each other with fluorescent light tubes. It was Nick Gage trying to get Cardona to do these, to hit him with like light tubes and stuff, and Cardona was trying to avoid it. Like absolutely trying to avoid anything sharp and anything dangerous. He was, so they were doing it right. That he was a newbie to death matches. He was not interested in being a part of this death match shit at any point in time. Even at one point, and when he started, he's the one who introduced like the fluorescent light tubes and stuff like that. They fought outside the ring. He knocked Gage down, and then he went in the ring and told the referee to count Nick Gage out. And they were like, "There's no countouts here. Like there is no countouts." And then Conan was like, "Oh no," And then that was like the little stuff that made it fun. Is how atypical it was. He was a fish out of water in this story, and that's what made it fun. Once things really started to pick up. Actually, you have to, before we even get to the part about it picking up, Zack Ryder hit Nick Gage with a fluorescent light tube, but he did it in such a pussy way where he just kind of like, teep, right across his head, and it cracked and shattered anyway. But he did not put any force behind it. He just kind of was like, bink, and it just broke, and everybody was like, boo. Like he was being real weak about it. Like he wasn't really like laying it in like he would later. That's the story they were telling, that, he goes from not being interested in this stuff to now he's deep in it and he's doing whatever it takes to win. And we go from there to, when Nick Gage takes over, he's Cardona's getting hit with fluorescent light tubes, and then he gets his pizza slicer baptism, where he's doing the pizza slicer across the head, and everybody's just going nuts for this because Cardona is squealing like a pig, and he's at some point he's crying, and he's muttering "fuck, fuck, 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 fuck." It was so much fun. It was so silly, and he started like begging off. Like you don't see wrestlers beg off anymore. Like you do not see wrestlers beg off anymore. And you saw Matt Cardona in the middle of the ring with his hands together, like, please stop this nonsense. Please stop it. And of course, he went through the glass. They did a suplex off the top rope through fluorescent light tubes and a bunch of nonsense. And so then things it was really, really fun. I was having fun with it. And then we got Judas played, the Jericho's theme Judas. And it got a very less than mild reaction. You would think if people thought Chris Jericho was coming out there, it'd be like, oh shit. It was just kind of like, doom, 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 doom. And people were like, what? Some people were like, oh, it's Chris Jericho. And other people was like, what? I believe it when I see it. And of course, it wasn't Chris Jericho. Some guy ran to the ring. He was wearing a hood. Nick Gage beat him up, took him down. And then later on, 4 more guys jumped into the ring. I have no idea who these people were, so I guess it didn't really help me. 4 more guys come into the ring. They're beating up on Nick Gage. And then another guy, Ricky Shane Page, comes to the ring and tries to stop those 4 guys from beating up Nick Gage. Again, because I'm not a regular as far as watching this, I don't know these people. So it's not working for me. I'm just like, you interrupted something I was having fun with this shit. And he stops them. Then Ricky Shane Page and Nick Gage work together to fight off the other 4 guys who had interfered in the match. And then Ricky Shane Page kicks Nick Gage in the nuts. This allows Matt Cardona to get up, hit him with the radio silence, aka the Rough Rider, pin Nick Gage, and win the GCW World Heavyweight Championship. And I was okay with most of the match. Most of the match was very, very fun. I did not dig the run-ins because I didn't understand it. But they gave Nick Gage this almost Undertaker like, it can't just be one guy interferes. This has to be like multiple. It's gotta be like 7 people interfering in this match. And that's how he manages to lose. But in that world, it would make sense that you wouldn't have just one guy interfere and beat Nick Gage. It has to be multiple. So I'll take that. I just wish I knew who these guys were. And I wish it was just Chris Jericho. If you just had Chris Jericho come in and hit Nick Gage with something like a chair in the back of the head or something like that, and that was just kind of it. It would have probably got a big reaction. But I think people, after Matt Cardona won the match, people started throwing beer bottles and everything. They were throwing chip bags and beer bottles and spit and all kind of shit. And it was wild. It was a wild scene. It was a great scene, for a guy who, is invading their territory and won their world title, beat their top guy. It was a great scene. It's classic pro wrestling. This is like, when Ivan Koloff went in there and beat Bruno and won the WWF belt. It's like a shocker, and people are completely disgusted because it's the home building. Bruno was like, something special in Madison Square Garden. And here comes this guy who just beats him. You're like, what the fuck? Like you're completely disgusted. In this situation, you got a similar response where you had people, Atlantic City, I believe is where GCW was created and where it was formed and everything, or New Jersey. And, this is obviously it's called Homecoming. And Cardona, an outsider from mainstream WWE, beats their top guy at one of their pay-per-views in their big show, walks off with the title. People were, of course, appalled. So they started throwing bottles and shit. Now, as fun as it was, and how awesome it is to see Cardona win a world title and everything, it was really cool. And to see that fish out of water story with Matt Cardona, as cool as it is, it could have been more fun. And this is really my own, other than the run-ins, which I didn't care for, and all the pizza slicers and shit, but you kind of had to do that to add to the story. You got this guy who doesn't do this shit, and now he's doing it. You have to do all that stuff. But what kind of bothered me was the reaction. You know, it was a very tame reaction for the crowd. You know, and I know it's a tame reaction, even when you look at the internet crowd, because everyone is in on the joke. You know, like wrestling is so much more fun when that's what makes WWE so much fun, right? It's because you don't understand it. When Karrion Kross got beat by Jeff Hardy, there was legitimate rage because people had no idea, like they have no idea what's going on or why. So they're just like enraged. In this situation, there's people who are like, "Oh, Matt Cardona won. That sucks." You know what? I really respect Matt Cardona for going in there and really wrestling Nick Gage and letting him do the pizza slicer and everything. That was so much fun. He's really cool. He's been a good heel. You're like, what the fuck? These people are too smart. They're so smart that it's not fun. That's the only reaction. Like, you want to, it was cool and seeing the moment. It had this very Rob Van Dam versus John Cena like moment where you got this guy coming into hostile territory where everybody hates him, everybody thinks he's a joke. And, it wasn't as well worked as Rob Van Dam and John Cena. It also wasn't as over, despite the fact that Nick Gage is, huge in that area. The match itself still was kind of like, middling reactions. It wasn't that great. But when you have people who are just kind of like, oh yeah, Matt Cardona, how much fun was that? He's having a blast. Look at him. He's having so much fun with us, making fun of us, calling us virgins and everything. You're like, man, that's why WWF is so much fun. WWE is so much fun because it's the only place you can get legitimate reactions. It's the only place you can get legitimate people are angry at something. People are still feeling Bray Wyatt losing to Goldberg. Or hell, when Goldberg beat Kevin Owens, like I said, they got PTSD from that. Like that was like real anger, legitimate gut feeling. You're not in on the joke, right? You're not in on it. You're not laughing along with it. You get that real guttural reaction. And here is a situation where you could have been trying to get a real guttural reaction. But what I think part of this was the issue, is when you started doing all of the run-ins, people kind of figured Matt Cardona was going to win once they started doing all the run-ins. So, and because you have so much of that, the people are so smart and they kind of see how these things are going, you don't get, it's not as much fun, as it could have been if people were legitimately shocked and appalled and pissed that Nick Gage got pinned by Matt Cardona. And you could have done that. You could have gotten probably a legitimate reaction by having Gage look sort of mortal, by having Matt Cardona beat him clean. As clean as can be in a death match. By doing all the run-ins and everything, you overprotected Nick Gage. Which I know is their thing because he's still their guy, even though he's probably going to be wrestling on AEW a little bit more to get those bigger paychecks. But you still want, if you're going to put Cardona over, put him over. Have him beat him, And I mean beat him clean in the middle of the ring and then have Nick Gage shake his hand. And then people would have or try to shake his hand, and then Matt Cardona could have spit in his face or something like that in order to avoid turning Matt Cardona face. But you can't really turn him face if everybody respects him. If everybody still remembers him as Zack Ryder, guy who really, really, really worked hard, who did his best, and who got fucked over by the machine, which is what they were saying on commentary. This guy got himself over without corporate. And, you're kind of like, you're building him up as a sympathetic babyface. That he's finally getting this big opportunity. Instead of saying he's a scumbag who deserves to get fired because he's a goof, I think that probably would have been the way I would have went with it. It's like, oh yeah, he didn't deserve to be in the main event anyway. He collects fucking dolls and shit. Like you can cuss on commentary there. So why not go that route with it? They went in oh yeah, everybody respects Matt Cardona and there's big respect for you even coming out here and getting in the ring. And that's not what you want. And I saw somebody online say, well, you just sold out a bunch of arenas by having Matt Cardona beat Nick Gage and everybody wants to see him get his ass kicked. And I would say that's true, but from looking at that reaction and not looking at the reaction from the people in the building, it was legit, surprise and people throwing bottles and shit. But from looking at it from the people online, they were having fun with it. You know, it was fun. It was silly to them. It wasn't serious. It wasn't, I want to see Ivan Koloff get his head kicked in for what he did to Bruno. That's not what it was. It was too many people like, oh, we're going to have so much fun with Matt Cardona as the heel who hates GCW and is talking shit about us. That's the problem with like underground. Like, it's really weird that underground wrestling is so, you know, it's just weird. But most of the match was fun. I give most of the match a good thumbs up. It was, you know, it had everything that I hate, but it was done in a way that makes the story make sense. And if it's a send-off for Nick Gage, but it's probably not going to be the official send-off. I think somebody said he's probably going to wrestle 2 or 3 matches in AEW and then come back. But I also saw some folks say, well, he's probably going to lose to Chris Jericho, and they don't want to have the GCW World Champion get beat by Chris Jericho. Makes sense. You know, you're going to beat Nick Gage twice in 1 week. You kind of want to take the belt off of him first. Okay, that makes sense. He's also supposed to wrestle Jon Moxley at some point in AEW, from what I hear. So he's not going to be hurting for cash. You know, there's going to be a lot of people who are he's going to get paid pretty well for these big matches that he's about to work. So that's good. You know, everybody wins. GCW gets a heel that is actually a heel and doesn't want to play within the rules. What they should do is have Matt Cardona suspend all the bullshit rules where he's like, we're going to reinstate countouts and disqualifications. This is going to be a real world title in a real wrestling company, not outlaw mud show bullshit. That would probably get him more heat than going out there working death matches with guys. If he was to reinstate the rules and say, I'm not defending the title in matches where there are no rules, you know, that would probably get, if he becomes a diva in that way where he wants to start making the rules and say, we have to have a standing 10 count, you know, we stop the match for blood, you know, I want to make this place family friendly. If he goes that direction with it and stops, you know, trying to fit in with the cussing and the middle fingers and stuff like that, he could get more heat doing that. Guaranteed. Go full Mick Foley, anti-hardcore. And that would be so much fun. But that's it. I enjoyed watching Nick Gage versus Matt Cardona. If you watched it, what do you think? Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, donate to the channel via Subscribe Star and or the tip jar, which would be in the description, which is the Cash App. And I'll talk to you guys later, man.
Skin tone, so why attach yourself and piggyback the wealth you didn't earn or lack yourself? I'm telling you to own up to your own success and failures. It's a reason why these sleazy